All right, Stacy, you can take it away.
Welcome everyone to the Intercoin show. My name is Stacy Brown, and my job here is to build the community. Now I'm going to briefly just introduce Intercoin for those that don't know. Intercoin basically is a tech company. We build decentralized products for absolutely any type of community. One of our main reasons that we host this show, we do this for many reasons, but one of our main reasons that we host this show is we want to figure out where communities are struggling with growth, efficiency, collaboration, amongst other factors. But this gives us a direction what to continue to build to solve these solutions. So keep in mind, when I say communities, we're not just referring to crypto or that. We're talking about absolutely any type of community, from small businesses, large corporations. We've previously assisted politicians, celebrities, nonprofits, cities, schools, sports clubs, influencers, charities, endless possibilities we want to support. So in May, we have a couple new products coming out. The Intercoin app, we have NFT Remix. Once everyone sees these two products that we have coming out, they'll kind of easily understand our mission and kind of where we're going as for service in communities. Today we have three special guests. We have Ian from Freenet.org. We have Jimmy from the CEO of Vault Hill. We also have Florin, the partner, managing partner of Harness Investment. Let's start this. Greg, if you want to introduce Ian, we can get started there.
Absolutely. So this is an exciting show. I'd love to have a productive discussion. There's so many people interested in creating a better world for humanity, whether that's online or whether that's helping them connect offline. So Ian Clark has been at this for a very long time, I think. Please tell me, Ian, there's a E, E at the end or no?
Yeah, there's an E at the end.
All right. One moment. So Freenet. So Ian Clark has been at this longer than any of us. I often joke that I was into decentralization before it was cool. Ian was into decentralization before it was even known in most circles. So he is the original author and the architect of Freenet. So Ian, I'll let you kind of tell a little bit about the people that didn't hear about it. What is Freenet, and how did you kind of come to realize that the world needs something like this?
Well, I was back in 1995. I started my degree in computer science and artificial intelligence at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And while I was there, I became just philosophically very interested in the idea of freedom of speech and the internet. Back in those days, people would talk about the internet. They would say it roots around censorship, and there was this idea that it is very much empowering the individual to speak freely. But I realized as I learned more and more about how the internet actually worked, that it really had the potential to be the most easily censored and controlled communication medium yet invented. And so I started to think about how you could build a layer on top of the internet that would allow people to publish and consume information without fear of censorship. And that led me to come up with the design for Freenet, which I did as an undergrad paper. And then I released that onto the internet, and an open source community formed around it to actually make it a reality. And we released the first version of our software in March 2000. And the project has been really ongoing ever since. And my focus for the last 2 years has been on a new project called Liquidus, which effectively is asking the question, what would Freenet look like if it was built for 2022 instead of being built for the internet as it was in 1999, 2000, when I came up with the original Freenet?
Yeah, I see a lot of what you talk about on the Liquidus project, the new project, is very similar to what we talk about all the time at Intercoin and qbix. Just for those people who don't know, I started qbix 10 years ago in order to sort of give everyone the tools that Facebook has, Google has, others, so they can run their own social networks, communities, and so on out of their homes, out of their villages, without needing to rent software from Facebook, Google, whatever. This means for documents, communication, collaboration, any sort of thing that evolves in time. You've got a document and improves, people work on it. Those things were done, but they were still done in a Web 2.0 kind of way, right? They were done in a way that there's still a central server. It's just in someone's apartment or some university. It runs the software that essentially keeps everything on the server. That topology and that software is very easy compared to what this is. So this is sort of where there is no central server and there are no specifically, there's no blessed source of truth or single source of truth, but rather it's pieced together from sort of a lot of different places. And so then you got to worry about things like Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus, which essentially means that it comes from this idea of Byzantine generals. This is a white paper or a paper written by a guy I spoke to earlier, Leslie Lamport at Microsoft. So he was in distributed systems for many years, decades, and he invented things like vector clocks. So this paper talks about what if in Byzantine Rome, a bunch of generals would not trust each other and they needed to announce if they're going to attack the next day or not. What would be sufficient conditions for them to come to an agreement? And how do we know if there's not enough infrastructure for them to come to an agreement? So the idea of consensus becomes important when you don't have a central server. With central server, you just say, okay, whatever the central server has, that is the source of truth. The problem with that is that when you concentrate a lot of valuable data or votes or just value in that central server, it becomes a honeypot for people to come and hack into that, right? So when you have the Facebook database or you have the latest election, you can go in there and you can change all the votes and you can change all the results of the election. Well, that's not really good. So then you need these systems, both for the point of view of society who wants to have something they can rely on rather than trusting Amazon or trusting Google with their election, but also it almost like removes the liability that small startups may have from storing very valuable things like NFTs worth millions of dollars or these and other things. Rather than having it in your database, who owns what, they distribute this among many computers. And so whether it's Ethereum or whether it's blockchains or whether it's systems like this, they store data in many places. And then the question becomes, how can you obtain consensus about the data, which is now not stored in one place, but is sort of stored by these machines that could all become corrupted. And the question is, what do you do? So that's what we have today. And I just wanted to also bring in our other guests talking about a human-centered internet with regard to metaverses. So just wanted to point out there's completely other aspect of the tech stack, which is to say it is the user experience, right? There's now VR with Oculus, and there's now XR, extended reality with iPhone. And this sort of blended reality where you could be at an event and other people could be at home. And you could have millions of people attending an event and only 1,000 people fitting into the venue. And the rest of the people are sort of like reliving this event. One thing that I found very interesting, people changed my mind about, is time shifting, which is to say you don't have to be at the event at the time it's taking place, but you could record the event and then later inhabit that event and sort of like come and take people to relive it and have a sort of interactive experience with a group of people that is just visiting the cemetery or visiting the wedding or whatever that is. So very cool stuff is happening, and Apple's going to be coming out with XR glasses, and we spoke with Robert Scoble, who is very into all things Apple and all things experiential. So we sort of wanted to talk about that as well. Stacey, would you like to introduce Jimmy as well, and we could talk about Vault just really quickly as well, and then we could have a discussion.
Sure, Jimmy, like basically if you want to just do a quick introduction of yourself and then maybe jump in and do an introduction of Vault, that would be amazing.
No worries. Can you guys hear me loud and clear?
Yep.
Perfection.
Okay, brilliant. So hi folks, my name is Jimmy Daudu. I'm the founder and CEO of Vault Hill. Really honored to be on here, and thanks for having me. A background spans, just like Ian as well, the first degree in computer science, a master's in advanced computing from the University of Bristol, and currently finishing up an MBA at the University of Warwick. Added to that, NFT expert from a certification perspective and blockchain architect from a certification perspective, coupled with a AWS cloud practitioner certification as well. Again, from a professional perspective, worked in large organizations as Barclays, Expedia, delivering, change and IT type projects, and got into blockchain space back in 2017. Everyone's raving about XRP. Bless him. Still got my own XRP from 2017, waiting for that price to jump to, I think it's $576. Everyone keeps saying is the number. So we're still waiting for XRP. We're here for the tech. Got into virtual land because having been born and bred in Nigeria, if you're not able to afford a house, which mortgages were limitless at the time, you start off buying affordable piece of land in where you want to live in, and then you save some money, a couple of years, you build the foundation, the first story, second story. So it could take you anywhere between 3 to 5 years to complete a building, depending on what you have in your pocket. And the concept of virtual land came about at the same time in 2017, 2018 when I jumped in. And I was like, hey, a young boy coming from Nigeria about virtual land, we buy land in Nigeria. I'm like, okay, same principle. Had no clue the utilities, the opportunities and all of that, and just bought it based on, growing up experiences. And fast forward to 2021, one of those pieces of land I bought for about $200 in Sumium space, sold for about $10,000. I sold that for $10,000. And for me, it wasn't necessarily the money, it was value. It was the fact that someone somewhere said, hey, I want to spend this amount of money on virtual land. And it got me thinking at the time to say, hold on, let's have a look at the technology around. There's blockchain, there's NFTs, there's extended reality, which Greg talked about earlier on. And for me, it was, how do we solve a problem with these technologies? How do we enhance human experiences? How do we look at how we start to humanize technology in the best possible ways, right? And got together a small group of folks that we've had relationships in the past from a business perspective. And, started Vault Hill. Officially we started about May last year, so about a year old. And it was quite challenging and difficult at the start because we had to create content, we had to create educational materials for folks to understand what the metaverse is. And, a couple of months later, Facebook rebrands to Meta and talks about metaverse. And everyone's like, Jimmy and Vault Hill, we know what you guys are building now. Okay, let's understand this more. But for us, it's around the human centricity, right? And when we talk about human centricity, some of the videos you're seeing here is how we're pitching and how we're building. So we're building, 4 islands across 3.5 years, 10,000 pieces of NFT as virtual land. And then what we're now doing is each of these islands are divided into 7 districts. Each of these districts are themed according to human instincts, so vitality, creativity, curiosity, idealism, romance. I keep forgetting the last 2. But a use case in vitality is working with health and fitness providers, physiotherapies, mindfulness to look at how we start to look at that humanity side of technology, right? So our first customer is a brand, a fitness app in Hong Kong, where we've built mindfulness for them, and they're going to start optimizing their business model with what we've built for them. That product is going live in July with them, and it's a testament to what we're building and dropping on the metaverse. So it's a subscription-based experience we built for them, but they're going to release 5 minutes out of 30 minutes mindfulness session. So Stacy, Greg, on a Friday night, you're like, hey, what do I want to do? Jump into the metaverse, put on your VR headset, and you come into Today Fit, and you're able to enjoy 5 minutes of mindfulness. And if you want more, you pay for it. So that's one use case. But MVP is landing in July, where we're building an NFT marketplace that's going to be ready next month. And then what we're doing is with every piece of virtual land we sell, we give out a VR device, again, to aid adoption. And then we're also building a no-code builder tool. So that way we provide each and every one the toolkit to actually create a seamless experience within our world. And that's how we're trying to piece this together to say, hey, it's all about adoption. It's all about education. It's all about understanding the use cases of various industries, various brands, various, stakeholder groups in this space to come in. Everyone has a different definition of the metaverse. Everyone has a different definition about, okay, what is human-centric? We're looking at it from the user experience. How easy is it to come into the space? The adoption, the conversion of cryptocurrency to pay for stuff, creating a content creation economy for content creators to monetize their work, to reward them and all of that good stuff. So that's what we're doing at Voltail, and that's myself in a nutshell. And hand it back to Greg or Stacy.
I think it's lovely that you're talking about human-centered experience. I think what we have today on the show is people from both the back end, which is providing the infrastructure for actually connecting people, and we have people creating front-end experiences. I would love to talk about scarcity. I think it's important to discuss what happens, because if you're selling things, the question is, what if everyone just makes a copy for themselves of this world and lives in it? Versus there has to be only one copy or editions with like 1 of 10 and so on. So I also want to talk about who stores the information. If there's a lot of information that accumulates, when and who actually pays for storage. Because with Freenet, there's a very innovative thing, which I'll talk about with Ian, which is that it simply says the least recently used content is discarded when you need more space in the network. As more computers join the network, there can be more storage. But if everyone stores everything, then no matter how many computers join, you only have a fixed amount. So these are things that are important now in the crypto space in 2022. But also the consumer experience is very important. Why even have decentralization, right? Like your metaverse maybe could just run off of a server, and maybe just use decentralization for one aspect, like who owns the plot of land could be on the blockchain, but all the other little things like where the furniture is or who is doing this or that can be just centralized because it's not valuable enough to replicate across thousands of machines. So that's the kind of stuff. And Stacy, but before we get into it, I want to introduce our third guest as well. With Stacy, maybe you can do the honors as well.
Yeah, we got Florin also here, and basically he's going to speak about like the origin. He wants to go over some of the tech stuff about it. He's also into marketing. Like all those things kind of tie together. So he was a nice guest to bring in with this.
Absolutely.
Welcome, Florin. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys. Thank you for having me this evening. Just a brief introduction of me, and I'll talk a bit more about my company. So I'm Florin Chukuri. I was graduated as a scientific in physical chemistry, Sussex University. That was quite a long time ago, actually now. And got into the financial markets in London. After that, got back to Paris, got into consulting, and that was obviously the start of Parlous Investment which is a holding, basically a holding company. So we invest in companies, many consulting companies. And in 2018 or 17, I got into blockchain. And I'm getting back on what you were saying, actually, Carl. That's very, very interesting. Actually, that's why I got into blockchain. It's why should a system be decentralized? And that's obviously a really good question, because as far as we were using the internet, everything was centralized. So all companies provided like a centralized solution where they had all the control on it, and obviously all the control mostly on your data. And what brought blockchain to that whole system is, well, for me, fascinating, because it gives back the power to the user. And obviously, talking about Metaverse, I'm going to get a bit more into that. Metaverse is exactly the same thing. I do believe Facebook's going to have a centralized Metaverse, because obviously they still want to control like data, what you can be doing with it. And the whole point of having it decentralized is obviously to give you all your right on what you're doing. And I think that's a very interesting point. So to get back on the introduction, part of this investment, as I said, was investing to companies, and we moved quickly in 2009 and 19, yeah, I think, yeah, if I remember well, or 20 maybe. We're going to blockchain consulting, because here in Paris and in London, a lot of companies were exploring, well, especially banks actually, because that's where I was coming from. They were exploring the blockchain technologies, and obviously they were quite afraid of having a decentralized financial system, which is still true today. And they're starting exploring it, building proof of concept, proof of values, and they actually got into the fact that for them it was more interesting to have a sort of a pseudo decentralized system, because obviously they still want to get at the end of the money, which is actually quite compulsory if you want to make money onto the markets, for instance. And from that we got on to a bit of marketing, helping companies to understand the needs, how they could use the blockchain technology to value their companies, which is also quite important, as most of people now are thinking it's the next step, the next real technological step. And since last year, we started getting into the Metaverse. So mainly like onto Sandbox and Decentraland, which are like, I guess, the two biggest nowadays. And I'm going to talk about a big example we've made, and we ended up this year onto a big project we had onto bringing a casino into the Metaverse.
Well, so you go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So should I start?
Well, I think let's jump into it. Let's have a discussion. The first thing I'd like to talk about is scarcity. Starting with Ian, when we have the back end storing information, it's storing information from many different applications, including Metaverses, DeFi, and keep in mind, the storage on Ethereum is very expensive and very limited, because every node stores everything. So with that approach, you're not going to get very far trying to store, consumer level information. So with other projects like Filecoin, being used to pay for things, right? So people can it's a generalization of paying for hosting, where you're not paying a specific host, but you're just putting money out there and saying whoever will host this will earn my money. Is there any, with Liquidus, are there any plans to use cryptocurrency to pay for things? Or how do you plan to address the storage problem?
Yeah, so with So it's perhaps useful to draw a distinction between our approach with Liquidus and say something like IPFS, which is probably the best known decentralized storage network. So our goal with Liquidus is not to provide long-term storage of data. We view it more like it's more like a communication channel than a storage mechanism. Whereas something like IPFS is really designed to say, okay, we want to hold on to this much data reliably for this length of time. How do we do that? With Liquidus, if you want to make sure that your data continues to be available on Liquidus, you as the publisher are responsible for doing that, and so you're effectively the providing the long-term storage yourself. You could of course use something for IPFS like that if you want to, but in terms of the other point with Liquidus and also Freenet, most blockchain technologies work by spreading. Every piece of information is shared with everyone, every participant in the network. With Liquidus, it doesn't work like that. In Liquidus, different peers in the network, different computers that are participating in the network specialize in different types of data. And so we don't need to broadcast everything to everyone, which of course makes it a lot more scalable, and so on. So in terms of a cryptocurrency, it isn't one of our top priorities, but we have been thinking quite a bit about the potential for building a cryptocurrency on top of Liquidus, because that would enable things like if you wanted to build a decentralized Amazon or a decentralized eBay or a decentralized Etsy, it would facilitate that type of use case. Because the way Liquidus works, it's kind of fundamentally a different set of building blocks to something like blockchain. So in order to build a cryptocurrency, we need to figure out how to solve particular problems. Probably the main one with cryptocurrency is how do you make sure somebody can't spend the same money twice? With Bitcoin, they solve that problem by having a global ledger, and they use Bitcoin mining in order to make it very difficult to forge that. But that has its own problems in terms of it's effectively burning electricity for no purpose, and there are kind of social implications there because the best place to build a Bitcoin mine is where the electricity is the cheapest. That often means that you're competing with the poorest people, and so you're effectively raising the cost of energy for the poorest, which is not ideal from a kind of social point of view. So but with us, we're not relying on hash cash, or we're not relying on that kind of mining in order to lock in people's wallet histories. Instead, we have to solve that problem in a different way, and I can kind of get into it, but a lot of this is really stuff that we're just in the process of designing right now. So yes, I think we can build a cryptocurrency on top of Liquidus. It'll probably be a couple of months before we have anything to play with there.
You know, you just touched on the double spending problem. I'm sure a lot of people here know, if they're into crypto, the original granddaddy of crypto, the Bitcoin project, solves the double spend problem in the most brute force way. It gathers all transactions in the world in one place, which is the miner, the computer, and then it puts it in a block, and then it tries to seal the block with sort of a stamp, a seal that it finds by doing all this work. And so every miner in the world is supposed to be getting all the transactions in the world, and if the transaction is not seen by a miner, doesn't get into the block, it doesn't count. So just one thing I want to say about that is, there are questions about how costly is it to defeat this scheme. And with small networks, it's easy to defeat because you can just go ahead and build a rig that has more than 51% of the hash power of the whole network. But as something like big like Bitcoin has wasting a ton of electricity, even if you were able to take over a few blocks for an hour, eventually the system, you'll run out of money to do your vandalism, and the system will still be mining its blocks presumably, and revert back to the correct branch, to the correct fork. But having said that, this paper right here by Jaap Henk Hoopman, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Jaap Henk Hoopman from, I think he's from Holland, so if I go to archive.org, this paper talks about, oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. This paper talks about how many computers do you really need to secure a transaction so that the probability of double spend goes to almost zero, becomes very negligible. And I'm not going to get into the craziness of the mathematics in the paper, but the point is that there's diminishing returns, right? So if you have 10 computers watching a specific coin or a specific chat or any sort of activity we here call interactivities at Intercoin, those things have a final state, right? What is the current state? And there's a hash of that. So if 10 computers watch that, it's pretty secure. After about 30 computers, it's so secure that adding another 1,000 computers doesn't make much sense. That's what this paper kind of talks about, it talks about notaries. That's what they call it, I think. Distributing the bank, right? The centralized bank into certain things. And so clerk sets is what they call it. But the idea is basically that they look at random ones. They look at what happens if they get shuffled after a while. And so it turns out that after about 30 computers, you don't need to. So if each clerk set watches one coin and so on, then each coin is very secure. And of course, coins can be worth different amounts. So a more valuable coin can be composed of lesser coins, or it could be a big coin. It's watched by more machines. Anyway, systems like this hold promise to solve double spending in something called parallel, right? So what the advantage of that is the more computers join the network, the more coins or things can be watched. Just like with the internet, nobody asks how many emails per second can be sent over the internet, because obviously the more computers are engaging in the email protocols, the more emails can be sent. Similarly with HTTP protocol, how many websites can be served over the internet? Well, there is no limit technically. I mean, maybe there's a limit in the sense of like atoms in the universe and things like this. But the idea is that they essentially can handle a practically unlimited amount because there is no bottleneck for the internet for these protocols, HTTP. Whereas there is a protocol bottleneck for every blockchain, right? Like I said, the miner is the blockchain bottleneck because all transactions have to be stored in one place. So Ian, you're talking about essentially systems that do something more like this, right? That there is no central point where everything gathers at all.
Yes, that's exactly correct. Yes.
So yeah, I think that's an exciting area of research. And there are certain results that, like the one I showed, that are not very well known, but if you rely on these results, then you have mathematical proof that, after 30 computers, you're pretty good and you can move on to securing something else. I often say that, sending a Bitcoin or Ethereum transaction is like putting $1 inside an armored truck and then surrounding it by a huge convoy of, people trying to protect that $1, whereas designed for a large piece of gold, a lot of gold or whatever. And so that's what happens. Blockchain uses the same amount of firepower on every transaction, no matter what. And it's almost like subsidizing the rich with the poor because you can't use small transactions on Bitcoin. It just doesn't make any sense. If everyone did that, then the fees would be 100 times the transaction itself. So Bitcoin and Ethereum are mostly used for large value transfers, securing large amounts. NFTs worth that's why the NFTs are worth millions of dollars. That's one of the reasons. The other reason is because there's no coincidence of wants. With a fungible token, you can measure out how much you want, you sell that amount, and people buy that amount. With an NFT, it's either you buy it or you don't buy it. It's either all or nothing. So that's why, since the transactions happen more rarely, so they happen for larger amounts. So for those two reasons, the technical and the economic, we get these $1 million transactions, and sometimes it's so illiquid that the next transaction can be $3. Like when Jack Dorsey's tweet was sold for $3 million, and then after that sold for $3, I think, in an auction. So that's an example. Okay, I want to ask about Vault. So how do you guys store your information? What information do you store, and what networks do you use for the backend to store it, essentially?
So good shout. I mean, Ian talked about IPFS, big popular one. We're leveraging that as well. We're looking at putting in the metadata of certain assets on that and storing some of the other metadata on the blockchain, such as the NFT ID and all of that, but the assets itself, the 3D images, the part of the game mechanics, all of that will be stored on IPFS. And it's important because I was actually on a product call today and we started calculating or estimating some of the new designs for images of the land that are going to go on the marketplace next month. Mm-hmm. And I was saying to the guys, okay, this render size looks like, it's, I think, about 20 to 30 meg, because if you look at OpenSea and Decentraland and every other, Web3 that has a metaverse, an NFT marketplace, there's certain specifications for the sizes of the images, whether they're GIFs, whether they're JPEGs, whether they're MP3, whatever file format it is, right? And we started calculating what that looks like. And I was like, okay, it costs us not necessarily a lot at this moment, but when you start to look at scalability, right? You have 1,000 people, transacting or experiencing. You shoot up to an event of 10,000, you shoot up to an event of 1 million. That definitely starts becoming a problem almost immediately. So for us, it's now looking at, okay, yes, we want to drop in the product, get to MVP, and start looking at how we scale. And we're in conversations with this company in Los Angeles called RP1. Spoke to their CEO, Sean, late last year. What they're building is something unique. They're looking at architecture and servers where you could run hand tracking, eye tracking of avatars in an event, and you can have 1,000,001, movements all within a 33 combined server. They're also looking to do some stuff with Microsoft as well from an architectural perspective. So again, for us, it's okay, how do we start looking at solving challenges like this? How do we look at interoperability? How do we look at data privacy? Data residency is key as well, because we have setups or legal entities in the UK, servicing Europe. We have, a setup in Dubai, servicing the MENA region, and one in Nigeria, servicing the African region. So again, it's, where do we host this, right? How do we start to make sure that we're compliant with, local laws that are still trying to understand, the metaverse and data and all of that. So for us and the team, we said, hey, let's capture as very minimal data. If it's not going to be used in interaction or the visualization, we don't need it. Wallet address, email address to jump into a profile in the VR headset or the MR headset is basically what we need. So we're trying to make sure we're not just taking data for data's sake, and obviously people are consenting for this data to be used as well.
Yeah, I think when it comes to addresses and emails and balances, those kinds of things are small, and that's the kind of stuff that's stored on the blockchain of Ethereum. But when you have the metaverse, like what you guys have there, you have these massive data sets with models. And look, they could be procedurally generated, of course. That's possible. Some games have been have stored a small seed and procedurally generated everything. But then the software itself needs to be on people's computers. So what I see is essentially, right there, first of all, there's two costs to developing a project, right? So let's talk about the economics first. First, the cost is it took you time to develop the 3D models, right? And the visual like assets and the whole like ambiance of the place, right? And so that's the R&D. That's something that is like a movie studio creating a movie and so on. And then once that exists, like, you got to distribute it. And so think about it like this. A movie can be in HD. It could be like a lot, there's different things that it has. A metaverse is like that, but you can also interact in it. So then it's not just storing and distributing information, but it's almost like updating the information, which is how I want to bring in Liquidus and kind of ask how Liquidus would help with that. But I just want to say this. This cost at some point is a fixed cost that is done. And then the question of this is it's ongoing cost. But then are you looking to forever recoup the cost of this, right? And this is what I was talking with Ian in the previous hour is like, okay, there are two models. Whenever you start restricting information that's already been created, whether it's a metaverse or whatever, right? That restriction requires technical intervention. Like, for example, if people know, there is something called digital rights management, or DRM, right? Which is built, they have to control the hardware manufacturers to make sure that every hardware is playing along and not letting you just rip a movie or copy a movie. And so this kind of stuff requires cooperation with governments and enforcement, copyright, and so on. Whereas with NFTs and this idea on the internet that information wants to be free, it's not always the case, and there are middle grounds, and it's always, fighting back and forth. But the idea is, look, you've spent this cost of creating your virtual world, okay? Now the question is, would you let people have unlimited copies of it, like with Minecraft, where you could play a local game of Minecraft, or are you going to have scarcity, like one world for everybody? And if you're selling land, most likely it's the latter. But at the same time, you've got this cost of hosting it, where you're pushing these massive data sets to computers. So there's probably a way for computers to ask around who's currently online in this world, right? So they probably have the rendering software and all this other stuff. So they can almost like send it to each other peer to peer. Or you could pay for hosting as the creator of this universe, right? This metaverse. And in that sense, people are relying on you, right? And then you're becoming this sort of thing where, do you really own your plot of land if you're the third party that sort of like everyone's relying on to store? And that's where that's where IPFS comes in and says, well, I don't have to rely on you because I'm also going to be paying with Filecoin to make sure this metaverse doesn't go down. Even if you go down or you go away as a project or you go bankrupt or whatever, this metaverse, I hope you don't. I'm just saying as an example, because there's many projects, the thing that you've developed lives on, and the community pays to keep it alive using a protocol like IPFS or Arweave or whatever. Am I kind of describing it correctly? Like, what approach do you take when it comes to distributing let's say the assets and the models, the 3D models, and all that that rich information? How do you actually distribute it? Is it through just IPFS or is it something additional to that?
So it's IPFS and AWS, right? And for each piece of land, users they get a gig of storage, right? And a gig of storage is way more generous than what the competition is doing. And for us, we're going to create a marketplace library of various 3D assets. We're going to also get folks the ability to import their creations from, tools like, Autodesk, Blender, Maya, and all of those savvy tools that creators use. and then put that into the world. Now you're 100% correct, and once you start to scale and once you start to do a lot of cooler stuff, you're going to need more space, right? And a subscription model will kick in, where if you exceed your gig, you buy some more storage for X amount, and that gives us the cost to also pay for that storage as well. So monetizing what that looks like. So it's starting to look like obviously you can't provide infinite storage for everyone, right? But you want to provide enough to get people to have a rich experience and showcase what that looks like. Now, the beauty of it is part of our experiences are going to be in AR. So again, each of the layers, each of the functionality layers are built on a different server. Mm-hmm. So avatar layer, a different server, game mechanics and gameplay, environments are built on a different server. So again, we have the failover, making sure it's high availability as well. But storage is still a major concern for us when we start to scale up. And, a lot of companies are looking at this, Freenet, Filecoin, a lot of peer-to-peer, sharing protocols out there as well that we're exploring. But we want to take it a step at a time, prove it works, start to deploy cool stuff and, test the boundaries and limitations of what we're building, to be fair.
Yeah, I would also like to suggest that, the idea that most people have is very monolithic in the United States. And in general, people think, okay, I am going to get investors. I'm going to build this thing. And then I'm going to essentially make profits with it forever, meaning I'll control it. And like Facebook, right? Or Twitter, which just Elon Musk took private right now. So we're going to have Zuck controlling Facebook and Elon controlling Twitter almost privately. It's an interesting thing because those platforms are used as public forums for people to debate politics or talk about with their family or their friends or whatever. So it's interesting because public forums are taking place on privately owned and controlled networks. And as you can see, that creates a sort of like complaints from people. And Zuckerberg is hauled into Congress one year for not taking down certain posts, and another year the president's administration chastises him for taking down certain posts, or the other way. And the thing is that it's because you can't be everything to everybody. So people are relying on these third-party services, which have grown very large. And so that's been the idea. Whereas with Web3 and this new crypto world, right, with DeFi and all this stuff, NFTs, the idea is that you develop it, and that's true. You put up the upfront cost, which is this, and then you sell your token, but you only make money on the primary sale, right? Meaning the people who sold Filecoin or Ethereum, like Vitalik Buterin, he's not making any more money when Ethereum is resold in secondary sales, right? He's not making any money from that, no royalties, nothing. And often that's how books are sold, right? First sale is how the person buys the book, and so on. The reason I bring this up is because it's a middle ground between what has historically been sort of enforcement, copyright, sending people to be punished for downloading something without checking with the copyright owner, right? The publisher. Like all the rights are with the publisher, versus owning by the community and the original developers selling their own token, where the primary sale they make money, and then after that the community is the one who is paying for hosting, paying for virtual goods, paying for whatever, but it's almost like you hand it off to them. And that process may take years. The token may be constantly being emitted by you, and you still have a monopoly power on being the issuer of that token, but you don't have a monopoly power on almost like controlling all the hosting and having all the responsibility. And in some ways that's great, because if you have a life, you start a family, you do this and that, you move on 20 years later, and you don't have to worry that someone's going to call you up and be like, well, your server's down and 3 million people are now looking to you to solve it. That's the promise of decentralized systems, hopefully, is that you build it, you build the content and you hand it off to this decentralized system, and you make money by essentially printing more tokens as your community needs more utility for whatever. And why do they buy from you versus something else? Because they have what's called the network effect, right? Why are people using Facebook instead of a clone of Facebook? Because all their friends are there, right? Because you've already established your network effect. And so from that point on, you can just make money selling your tokens. But that's like a middle ground between totally releasing it for free, like the polio vaccine, like Sir Jonas Salk, and controlling everything about your network and always being there to host it. So do you have any plans to, introduce your own token?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we currently have a token, raised about $2.1 million between December last year and January this year, right? So, that's funding development and product. But again, for me, it's, looking at different business models of other projects out there, right? Not a lot of them have thought past beyond, let's release token and let's get a community, let's hype it up in the market. A lot of, again, without calling names, haven't really thought through how can we make this sustainable? How can we make sure that this project lasts a whole while? I mean, I'm building Voltail to compete with Facebook. People might seem like, hey, Jimmy, really, is that what you're talking about? I'm like, yes, I want to build Voltail to a point where Mark reaches out and says, hey, we love what you're doing, want to buy you. And I'm like, I'm not too sure about that. And for us, we're looking at business models in terms of, revenue generation. We've ticked the box on that. We started generating revenue as early as, 8 months in, last month. We have a revenue model of advertising within the metaverse. Again, very, very cautious around how we do that. We have transaction fees from the NFT marketplace. We have, galleries that we're going to be, creating where people can lease, rent, monetize. So we've looked at the business model within this ecosystem. And when we bring brands on board as well, we want to also give them the opportunity to leverage all of this toolkits to enable their own customers to monetize their creation as well. So for us, it's, thinking this through to say, hey, we want a business that's going to be resilient through the bear market, through the bull market, and ensure that, people are like, oh, okay, I love what these guys are doing. I want to mess with them. I want to jump in. I want to explore. I want to be a part of this. And again, it's complex. It's challenging. We're working through 3 different core technologies: blockchain, gaming, and cloud computing. It is, I kid you not, it is challenging to say the least. But we're doing it. It's exciting. It's fun. We have a team of about 31 distributed across the world. And it's fun. Everyone's enjoying what we're building, and we're pushing stuff out there, and it's great. It's amazing.
That's amazing.
I'm honored and blessed.
Listen, I'm just excited for you guys because you raised the money. You're building this virtual world. You're having fun. You have a great team. Are you guys distributed around the world, or are you all in the same office?
Yeah. We're all remote. We just set up a small office in Dubai where we have 4 folks. In the UK, we have about 4. In Nigeria, we have about 6. 1 in Pakistan, 1 in India, 3 in Europe, Portugal, Romania, and I can't remember this guy's country. Apologies.
It's okay.
But we're globally distributed, right? And the diversity across the team, keeps us strong as well. Multi-talented, multifaceted, team players, and we're doing stuff. We're working hard. We're not just faffing around. We are actually working hard.
So first of all, that's amazing.
Call,
You're living the dream. Like, you have a decentralized team. I was just in Dubai recently. It's great over there. I was never in Nigeria, although I want to visit. So that's
you should. It's a great place.
No, I'd love to. It's one of the biggest economies. I think it's the biggest in Africa, right? With the African Union now. But let me ask you a question, by the way. I've heard U.S. politicians say that this is, quote, an African proverb. I don't know if it's true, that it is an African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Have you ever heard anyone say this?
Hey, I've heard of this, but I've not heard the term though. It was African proverb though. So that's new to me, but I've heard this before, definitely.
You probably heard it from U.S. politicians who claimed it's an African proverb, but who knows?
We might be able to translate that in Yoruba, one of the core languages, or Igbo, and it's like, oh yeah, it is African.
It could be. I mean, it's one of those things, like many hands make light work. But here's the thing. It's like,
Absolutely.
it's like basically you can do all the hosting yourself and get everybody relying on you. But if your project is successful, that means more and more people will be downloading this particular data set and be interacting in your particular environment. And so the infrastructure for hosting it and for evolving it through time, if you are always responsible for it, you're going to get more and more stress on your data center, right, from all these people. And so that's why I feel like it's important to have these systems which offload the responsibility and frankly make it more like almost like people can download from their neighbors rather than having to download all the way 3,000 miles away. So like that's why I think that Liquidus and other systems may actually be useful for this sort of thing. But I just want to kind of ask Ian, like, what do you see, Ian, as Liquidus being able to offer this? Because if long-term storage is not something that they'll use Liquidus for, but what would they use Liquidus for in metaverses like this?
Sorry, Ian just had to drop
he had to go.
He had a meeting.
Okay,
he
great.
Just left.
Oh yeah. Okay, no problem. So I just wanted to say I think it's important to have these infrastructural projects. So let me then talk about Intercloud really quickly. Intercoin is building its own system to compete with blockchain. Not so much compete as to almost like obliterate if once it shows up, because blockchain is about solving the double spend problem. It's about evolving the state of the blockchain itself, the entire global state, forward a little bit, and that's called the block. And there's much, invested in making sure to secure that block. That's how blockchain works. And the problem with that is everything's very expensive, right? Every computer stores everything. And so you guys wouldn't store most of your info on blockchain, right? You would store it with IPFS. You would store it with AWS, which is in centralized places, and so on. But you wouldn't store it on a blockchain. So Intercloud is building on what is essentially the install base that we have currently with qbix. So qbix, my first company, has a lot of computers that run programs like this. Programs like calendars. You can't really see it here. Okay, so we've got about 10,000 computers around the world, or maybe 50,000 computers running a program called calendars. And what they do is essentially helps them to see their calendars. Well, that runs 24/7 across multiple machines. And somewhere in 2018, we had a thing where we got not really in trouble, but I was on a cruise actually, and I got this call from Ars Technica, so qbix mining calendar. So Newsweek covered us, the BBC covered us, qbix. Basically, what it talks about is our calendar was used to mine Monero as a way to pay for the software. This was our calendar, and unfortunately, the mining software was supplied by a third-party vendor. It didn't work correctly, and we had to remove it. People were annoyed. We were the first app ever in the app stores to use mining to pay for the app. And there was just all things about Ars Tech. This guy broke the story. And I'm proud. Yeah, here I am. This is me in BBC, and Newsweek talked about me. So this was a few years ago. And what that taught us is, proof of work kind of sucks. But The idea is that we could get all 50,000 users to download whatever to secure or to service a network. So if we launch something, which we will, Intercloud, it will secure a lot of data. It won't store the data itself, probably, because that already is done by IPFS and so on. But what it will do is it will secure the hash of the data. It will say, what is the latest state of this or that thing? And that's important for metaverses. It's important for other things. But the key to keep in mind is that with Intercloud, there is no one global monolithic data structure like a blockchain. And there's no global consensus which the entire network has to engage in every 10 minutes. Rather, consensus is being engaged in by, like I said before, 30 computers or 10 computers. Each thing is by itself. Each thing can evolve without blocking every other thing. And the global consensus is done, but only occasionally to reshuffle the consensus groups, essentially, the small groups that are watching the interactivities. So Intercloud is something that we're raising money to do. It will be powered by Intercoin. People will pay for storage and all kinds of things using Intercoin. And that will be a major part. Like Intercoin is used, this would be used the same way that Matic or Polygon, is used in the Polygon network, Matic network, right? Or Ether is used in Ethereum network, which is to say it's used as a fuel to store. But this is an important point also, is that there is no mining. There's no mining rewards. There's no block rewards because there's no block. So since there is no block, anyone, as many computers as they want, can join the network. So if we gave them rewards for doing stuff, participating, storing, whatever, then they would just pretend to store each other's information just to get more of these coins. In other words, I'll store your fake stuff, and you say that I'm storing it, and then you store my fake stuff, and so on, and we'll all get coins. So you can't have that. So the coins would actually be issued by us. It would be a fixed supply that's like growing gradually. That's what Intercoin is. There's limits on how quickly it can enter circulation. People like that. That's why they get Bitcoin. They know the Bitcoin's not going to get flooded with more Bitcoin suddenly. And so that is there. But we're the issuer. And so when the network demands more Intercoins, in other words, there's more need to store something, Intercloud, there's more need to do things. Then Intercoins go up in price, and now they're worth, above $1 or above whatever. Then we could keep selling Intercoins at $1 into that market, and or $2 or whatever, to sort of raise money for more development, more things. So that's what Intercloud is. Intercloud is the next generation that goes beyond blockchain, and sort of all those applications that you thought blockchain was going to do, that people hyped blockchain is going to do, but they can't because it doesn't scale. Intercloud will scale, and Intercloud will do. But that's in the works. It's not something that exists right now. It's just only something that we designed, architected, and documented. So what remains is to get a team to build it. And so that's another thing that we have coming down the pike. We're talking 2023, probably. I just wanted to put it out there because I think it's important that we discuss projects like Ian Clark's project, or MadeSafe, which is another brilliant project that is available right now, and they've been working since 2004. It's important to discuss how are we as a society going to pay for the infrastructure? Because if we don't figure this out, we're going to live in a world which is completely centrally controlled by the big corporations, which is what we're doing now and what we've been doing. So hopefully with the metaverse, we can get into this decentralized control. So bringing it full circle, I just want to ask this. Imagine if we have metaverse and people are spending 4 hours a day in virtual reality with their, office meetings and everything like this being in the metaverse. And then 10 years later, we have Neuralink, where it goes directly in your brain, and now you can smell things, and there's a pot of stew and so on. Would you rather be living in a world where that is controlled by corporations who restrict your ability to smell the soup and to talk with your friends? Or would you rather have open source software powering these metaverses, right? And cryptocurrency being sort of like the medium by which people pay each other, but no central party is like hacking into your brain and trying to extract more profits from you. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, as it gets closer and closer in your brain, like, I feel like we absolutely need to have less corporate control of these platforms.
Definitely decentralization is the key, right? It's just getting the masses to realize that.
I think, yeah, people need to understand. But like, decentralization is important because like otherwise, these are probably the most nicest guys running like Telegram and Signal, right? They care about your privacy. They don't ban people for no reason usually. But still, they are our last sort of line of defense against governments. Like, this guy's been approached multiple times. His team has been approached to put backdoors into Telegram for the CIA and others. And this guy is constantly being searched at airports, and his hardware is confiscated and all this stuff. And that's only what he tells us. Yeah. So like, whereas like Vitalik Buterin can walk around and he has no control over Ethereum, like, meaning he doesn't have that much control because whatever he does has to go through a consortium, and then all the miners have to download his software.
Consensus and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very true. That's why what Jimmy was talking about, it's about storage. Obviously, storage is a massive problem, especially with the growing of various blockchains. And that's why off-chains popped up. And that's very important to keep on the blockchain, like only like the really important information and not like to store everything. Well, just to say about this. But on the storage, for me, being on the metaverse and conducting project on it, there's no point of having a centralized storage data center. It has to be also decentralized. Otherwise, every time you're going to be coming back to the same problem of this company owns all my data, can shut down, can go bankrupt, can go whatever, and your data is going to be out of your hands. So it's really important to explore that type of storage for, and that's actually what we choose for our project for the Metaverse Casino. That's going to be on Filecoin, and I didn't want that to be centralized. Otherwise, the spirit of it is just like lost, really.
I think it's really important. I really feel that like there's paradigms, and because of the Cold War, a lot of the United States rhetoric was like against anything other than private ownership of everything. And there was a thing, I remember, I built it, I own it, because Obama said you don't own that, you didn't build that, or something like this. And the thing is, like, if you built it, you own it, then we have to admit that Pavel Durov owns Telegram, and Moxie Marlinspike owns Signal, and Mark Zuckerberg owns Facebook, and now Elon Musk, who didn't build Twitter, owns Twitter. And so like the thing is like, okay, they own it. So what does that mean if all of us are relying on it, right, to use it for our conversation? So I think that Web3 broadened this conversation. There's certainly a lot of capitalism, and that's awesome, having people own their own little piece of something, right? Own their own little store, serve their family, friends, neighborhood, pizzeria serves the pizza. That's valuable, noble, whatever, right? But when you have one engineer for 1 million people, right? I'm sure these guys have, right? At that point, it seems like it's bigger than you, and it's just automated. And it's like, what are you doing, like being in charge of everything? Like just because, and I'll come out and say it as a tech person, right? As someone who is building something myself, at some point it becomes bigger than me, right? And so
Yes.
that idea that I must generate profits for shareholders forever was, I think, is an outdated idea because we didn't have Web3. That's how Facebook was. Funded. And guess what? Look at these guys like Marlon, Moxie Marlon Spike. They left WhatsApp. They built WhatsApp. They got Aqua hired. They got the golden handcuffs for a few years, and then they got disgusted by what it turned into because of all the. They wanted it to be end-to-end encrypted, for example, and Facebook said, "Okay, fine, but we still need to sell ads. Like we still need to know what people are talking about so we can sell them ads." Right? And so they left, and that's how they started like Open Whisper systems that they already had, and they started Signal. And this guy, oh my God, like this guy was pushed out of his own company, which was the Russian Facebook. He was given millions of dollars by Russian oligarchs, I think, initially. And then guess what? Later on, the Mail.ru conglomerate wanted him to sell the company. Plus, the government wanted him to give up info on his users, and he was like, no. And he was quite a anarchist. So at the end of the day, both of these guys describe themselves as a sort of anarchists, but look at how much pressure like they have from the system, right? And I just want to give one more example. Mark Zuckerberg. So not many people know this, but Mark Zuckerberg was quite a crypto punk, a cypherpunk back in the day. So Mark Zuckerberg, first of all, made Microsoft wanted to give him $1 million for his Winamp type player. He made sorry, I should have put Mark Zuckerberg. So Mark Zuckerberg, when he was in high school, he turned down $1 million, okay, to not sell his first thing, Synapse. You know what he did? He just put it up on the internet as open source. Okay, that was his first action. AOL and Microsoft wanted him to sell his thing and acquire. He's like, no, I'll just make it open source. Same guy makes a Facebook for Harvard, right? And he thinks it's pretty cool. He makes it for Harvard. Then he moves out to Stanford. And what happens? He meets this guy, Sean Parker. So not many people know this, but Sean Parker had... When Mark Zuckerberg came there, he wanted to build a peer-to-peer, decentralized, maybe even end-to-end encrypted file sharing system. And he wanted to call it Wirehog. So I was in TechCrunch Disrupt. I saw Sean Parker 2010 live on stage talking about this. Well, guess what Sean Parker did? He's proud of the fact that they put a bullet in that thing. Wirehog never got released. Basically, Mark Zuckerberg was told that you got to make money. You got to make a centralized project like Facebook, and you got to make sure to recoup the investment for everybody. And so Peter Thiel, the guy who invested at Clarion Capital, Peter Thiel put in $500,000 and it turned into $5 billion. So good for him. That's a great bet by Clarion Capital. Okay, he turned basically, and then he's got these weird Roth IRAs now with $5 billion. But that's not the point. The point is Peter Thiel has a book called 0 to 1. And he talks about how competition is for losers and you should build a monopoly. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. That is what he says in his own words. Competition is for losers, how to start a monopoly, and how to capture value, okay? So these are the mentors of Mark Zuckerberg. If you want to create and capture lasting value, build a monopoly. So this is very antithetical now to Web3. I'm saying Web3 has broadened people's idea that, you know, these guys are a little extreme, but the result is Mark Zuckerberg is now, he learned the lesson. He runs Facebook with an iron fist, and I'm sure Elon Musk will do the same with Twitter. It's like very different than Web3. I think Web3 has its own problems with Ponzi schemes and things like this, which is why we are doing Web4 with Intercoin. But I'm saying at least Web3 has moved beyond the idea that one person has to always control the network forever. And
Yeah.
that's important. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I do agree with you, Greg. But bear in mind, it's a bit like well, that's a bit harsh to say that, but that's a bit like Pavlov dogs. If you know the story, if you train someone to do something, it would just be natural for him to do it. And if we take another example, I entirely agree with everything you said, but I think for me, but obviously from where I come from, it's money. Like, people don't understand that today in the banking system that works very well. Actually, you can create money out of nothing. You can get credit from everywhere. It's really cool, but you don't earn your own money, which is a lot different with the blockchain system. All right. Mm-hmm. The only problem we have in the blockchain system, actually, we studied that we were in following the classes at Berkeley. That's where, how can you leverage money on blockchain? And that's very hard because you don't have like a credit system so far that is efficient enough to enable people to live normally. Because obviously, if every one of us was living with only the money we were earning, well, that would be hard to buy like $1 million house or a boat or even a car sometimes.
Right.
So that's a point that we need to solve. On the top of the stories we were talking earlier, that's another point we need to address. And getting back to the last project we delivered on Metaverse for a casino, well, in real life, at least in France, they can't lend you money. All right, you come with 500 euros, you have your 500 euros. You can't say, give me 1,000 more, and maybe I'll make it up. All right, doesn't work this way. But on the Metaverse, obviously, it's a bit out loud. So you can pretty much do everything you want. And they want to, well, actually, they asked me to work on a system where they could lend money to people with the sort of guarantee they would get that money back in some ways.
How do you guarantee? I mean, there's always a chance that everything can fail.
And that's my whole point. That's the point I basically don't have an answer for. But I'd like to find some like tangible asset we could put on the side, you know, to sort of guarantee a level of lending. Obviously, you can't just come in and with your avatar and ask for $1 million, all right? But you could still like put some asset, or maybe put, I don't know how we're gonna make it. We put on some hypothesis on that, but didn't really reach a final solution. But I thought that was an interesting point, because obviously people have to realize, and that's what I wanted to say. It's nowadays people don't realize everything's controlled by anything, and actually we had the funny stuff with the COVID. Here in France, it's the government issued like an application, like a simple web application, mobile application for people to be able to sort of be traced if they were contaminated or if they were healed or if they had people around them with the virus and stuff. So, and people were like obviously really against it because that was like tracking people around. And funny stuff is that they just don't realize that just going around with an iPhone, you're entirely tracked. Going onto your Facebook, going onto your Instagram, going onto your WhatsApp. Everyone knows where you are, what you're doing. And we're getting back to that decentralized system where people will realize that finally they can control, they can give the information, they cannot give it. But if they're not giving it, the information is nowhere. But it's still a work people have to, it's still point people have to understand, have to touch, and they don't really get it yet.
I think in general, we're going to see a lot of innovation around also like the revenue models. Because everything you're saying is right. And we're just exploring like new ways that people are going to live in these virtual or inhabit these virtual worlds. So like with Vault Hill, how do you make money? It's just selling the land, or what other mechanisms are there?
Sorry, Jimmy had to leave.
Oh, he had to leave. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's something that we can
Yeah, I
all
was quite
talk
curious
about,
on
like,
that.
We got to
Like-
connect everybody on the forum afterwards so we can
yeah,
continue.
definitely.
Yeah.
Because there's people that are messaging me that had questions for Jimmy. So yeah, I'll ask him if he'll join. When will the concept of the metaverse be considered like the norm? What do you guys think? Like, because tech's moving so much faster than what it used to. Is this something that's going to happen like quickly, or do you think that, like, not that I'm a fan of meta, but do you think that's something that will make it kind of move a lot faster?
Yeah, that's a very good question indeed. The problem I see in that is, I guess that's going to go massive when Meta is going to release its own centralized metaverse, and I do hope that when that's going to be released in, but because obviously there was a big boom. I got like massive calls and stuff for when they released it in was it in February or January or something like that earlier this year, and really I thought obviously they're going to try to attract as much as people they have on Facebook onto it. And we have to get really, really innovative for people to understand that maybe it would work a bit better if they were actually on a decentralized one. But there's always going to be this sort of competition between the two of them. But I do believe in 2-3 years that's going to be a lot more active. I've seen projects. I've been contacted by French massive companies for teaching, for coaching, for meeting rooms, for pretty much everything, even for conception. Like in the industry, when they have a concept of when they're building up a new piece of work, and they want their engineers who are spread pretty much all over the world. They want all engineers to be able to turn the piece around, to be able to see it with augmented reality, with extended reality, and all that type of functions to enable everyone to go a lot quicker on things. But I'm going to get back on a real point on that as well, is that everything, and that's a bit like the drawback of the metaverse. It has to be updated a lot quicker than companies do on a normal Web 2 type of application, because if you address B2B, that's going to be roughly the same. But if you address clients, like individuals, then that's going to be another story, because obviously we're going to keep on coming back to see new things, to see new innovation from your company. I'm thinking about Samsung, I'm thinking about Adidas, I'm thinking about all these companies. They're going to have to provide massive innovations all the time to keep people coming and getting used to it and buying into it.
That's what we're going to do with... we have a project called NFT Remix that we want to have exactly like Nike and other brands, basically reach their audiences. So when you have a TV series or Marvel movies or whatever, they have a community, right? So those communities, like we have here, those communities have people and profiles, but then also you want to release NFTs. And so the innovation doesn't have to come from in-house. A lot of times Nike might not have in-house, people with the innovation, but they could put a contest together to let other people to provide sort of animated shorts and many other things. And that's innovation can come from anywhere. And that's what this is about.
True, but most of when you get 1,000 clients, how many of your clients, what's the proportion of clients who are going to be active in something? It's probably quite a few.
It has to be. There's always a probability distribution. Some people are very active, some less. But here's Andrew Yang. If people believe in the campaign, the political campaigns, right? We've done for those. Here's Andrew Yang.
Then they will.
You
Yeah.
got, you got like Yang Gang, Berkeley Yang Gang. You got all these people, right? You could see these are actual people, like what they are about. You could read about their interests, and you could see common interests, and then even chat with them. Here, I'll do something pretty cool. I can start a conversation with this person right now, just to show you how it could work, and then eventually add them to my contacts if I like it. So here I'm gonna just show you. This is me. Show my camera, and just like that, decentralized on the web, it should. There I am. It started a video chat that I'm doing right now, and this is happening on the web as I am, browsing the website and doing stuff. So if I want to, if I like this person, I'll just add them to my friends or any other thing, and boom, there it is. So these are communities that we build with qbix. This is just a small example. These communities that we build, that you can easily, for example, look at all my business contacts. There they are, including this person I just added. These are real people. Okay, these are real people. So I'm able to essentially, oh, there's that little bug. Basically, these people I'm able to meet, collaborate, chat with them, and create this extended community around it. Okay, this is the call that's happening right now in the chat. So that's how it works. And then all of this stuff going on. This is the kind of software that we build, essentially. So yeah, this is basically just an example of I think the alternative to Facebook, the alternative to having to pay Facebook for, all this stuff. Now this bug we just started this week. It's because of the video conferencing that we're doing. But in general, you could see how all of this can work. You could pay people $20 or whatever through Apple Pay or through whatever. You could have credits that you earn, or crypto credits that you earn as well. All these types of things. You can invite people through scan QR code, share link, all these things you can do. And so these are components for communities to be built by brands. And then brands can get innovation happening from artists or whatever. So that's the idea. That's the idea, basically.
Okay, and when a client or a contributor, obviously contributes to a product, for instance, he would get some money back from his contribution, or how does it work? Do you have a sort of a reward system on it?
Yeah, we have everything. We have reward systems. We just finished building a rewards smart contract, literally here.
Cool.
Yeah, we have everything. People get rewards for donating. It's literally called a rewards contract. So if you donate to refugees in a fund, you get rewards. You get NFTs. You get all this kinds of stuff. All of it is already done. It's just a matter of putting it all into applications, right? And that's what Intercoin is about.
Yeah.
That's what Intercoin's about. But our whole vision is, like Stacy knows, is we don't even want people to know that it's crypto behind this. You could see this feels like web.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I understand that. Obviously, most of my clients, asking about blockchain, but I'm like, blockchain is like asking about servers and cables, and it doesn't actually matter. We're just taking the advantage of it, but it's like a backbone. It's really the infrastructure. I was searching for the word. It's really the infrastructure behind a decentralized system that we're building.
Yeah, I mean, people are talking about the geeky stuff because that's what they've been told about. But what we really need is just we need just user interfaces. You can just see who you're talking to and absolutely.
But that's where you need and will need in another project we're doing. We need so much design. So it's just UX consultant. Well, it's just like the main point, because like for that casino, if the atmosphere is not as good as the person coming are expecting, then you're going to lose everything. So the experience is so important. It's almost all about that. At the time it gets complicated, gets a bit blurry, gets a bit like not really what they're expecting, they're not going to stay. Well, it's a bit like the central problem we get like in real life. When you're opening a shop, obviously it has to be designed in the inside. You need like good chairs, good desk. It's a bit like the same type of problem. It's like 3D world.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's what we're kind of building. That's what we're kind of doing. By the way, just by an accident, this was showing up like this, right? And I kind of thought this was cool. What do you think, Stacy? Like a ribbon over here, and then like imagine this was a little ribbon like going around. I think this effect, I kind of like it. Do you know what I mean? Just
Yeah, looks good.
right, the selected like ribbon thing. Yeah. Anyways, so that's the kind of stuff we build. We're still working on edge cases, like what to do when this thing is in a cramped window. It kind of writes over itself, stuff like that. But yeah, that's basically, we're just fixing, like polishing it up, but everything else is already like working. Everything else just works out of the box, basically.
Cool.
Yeah. So Stacy, do you have any other things you wanted to ask or to talk about before we end the show?
Well, did we just want to maybe kind of go over like marketing for how that works? Like any good marketing strategies for metaverses and that kind of stuff?
Sure. So what kind of marketing strategies do you guys see? I personally think that building a community and putting out content is the big, thing that influencers want to do, that brands want to do.
So I think to build a community, you have to be in the community, in my opinion.
Yeah. To build the community, you have to be in it. Well, yeah, of course.
But you need to be out, you need to be active. I know like Florin might want to speak on this. I know he knows all about marketing and that kind of stuff as well. The question kind of was towards him.
Yeah. Oh, so sorry, Stacey. Yeah. First point in your marketing strategy in Metaverse, but I guess that extends to a lot of field. It's what's your target and what do you want to achieve with it. So that's the first point of discussion we're having with our clients, because it's exactly like blockchain. I want a blockchain system in my IT system. It's okay, that's fine. What for? Well, I don't really know, but we saw that it brings value to the company. But actually, sometimes it doesn't. So there's no point of investing millions of euros or dollars in some IT development for nothing. So same thing with Metaverse, and I'm going to explain why. So first, you need your target. What do you want to do with it? Is that to expose exclusive contents? That's to organize specific events that are not going to be organized in real life. So you need something quite specific. All right, that's the first step, and that can also be for your VIP clients, for instance. So I'm going to create like a venue, or I'm going to buy a building just for my VIP clients to be able to see the future of the company or the future of the brand or new products and so on. So that's the first point. Second point, and I'm going through, so it's quite a business strategy, but second point is obviously the planification. Okay, planification would like bring in IT people, designers, UX, business, and also financial part. Because as I was saying, financial part in the metaverse is quite important. Obviously, you need to buy a lot. Okay, parcel. That's the first stuff you need to buy. Maybe you want to rent it. Okay, so you need to find out maybe the environment around to find the best place to rent it. Okay, and after that you need to build it. So most of the companies nowadays, they bought like a little parcel somewhere, maybe lost somewhere, and they just put like a logo on it. All right, and after that you need to build your whole strategy of because what I'm saying is if you're doing the exact thing you're doing in the real life, maybe there's no point. So you need to find like innovation in it. All right, so you need to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, a lot of communication. And as you were saying, Stacey, if you already have, well, there's a bit like two things. Maybe you starting out of nowhere, so you have to build up a community. And clearly, if you're not part of it, that's going to be quite hard. Or you already have like millions of clients somewhere in a database. And then you might want to target these people, target certain type of people to filter all this database to propose a real experience in the metaverse. And after
Amazing.
that, in the middle of that, you need to understand how are you going to make or create value, actually more than make money. How are you going to create value out of it, out of this experience? Because once again, if I'm going to let's say stupid thing like to a baker in the metaverse, okay, I'm going to get in. Okay, that's fine. That's nice. Pastry looks good. And what am I going to do? Am I going to buy like 10 XRP a croissant or something like that? There's no real point of that, right? So people might find it funny at first, but like with NFT, at first it's funny. You create one, you sell it for 10K, you're happy. But after a while, it doesn't bring anything to anyone. So all these various points has to be addressed like quite thoroughly, and well, it's sort of brainstorm, and I think that nowadays most of the companies don't really know what they're doing with that, and obviously that's why we're here, doing a bit of promotion. But obviously that's where we get into the game to help our clients to understand what are they going to make out of it.
I could not agree more, because I think a lot of people don't even think about creating the value. I think that's missed in a lot of projects, from what I'm seeing.
That's the stuff. Yeah, it's like with companies, obviously, when I was only investing in various companies, I kept on receiving like bosses of small companies, and we're doing this with that. They have no vision of anything. They have no idea of where they're going to be in 1, 2, 3, 4 years, like a bit of a projection of anything. And if you don't do that, that means you don't bring any innovation. That means you're just doing your job every day. And if you're just doing that, wow, that's going to be hard to create value. And if there's no value creation, you're quickly out of the game, basically. So it's really important before doing anything, it's what are we going to make out of it? That's really like the first question. And actually, that's the first question, the first question I'm asking. Why do you want to go into the metaverse? Well, because everyone's going in there. Okay, it's fine, but doesn't mean that's going to work for you.
Exactly. And then another thing is branding. Branding is so important. And I think, there's certain people that have amazing products and they fail strictly because of branding. And then there's other products that have really not a lot of purpose, utility, anything, but they succeed because they're branding. So I think that's something that's very important as well.
That's actually, well, for me, that's a point. You're building all of the various types that I mentioned. Your communication and your brand, branding, which is the actual word. The branding is so important, because if no one's hear about you, it's doomed, basically. And you're very right on that. It's not like when you're looking at startups, it's not the best. It's not the startups that made the best product who are actually famous and rich. It's just the startups that have made the best branding. So when you think about that, you understand how important it is. You can be the best in the world, but if no one's know about it, it's pointless.
Exactly. Your designer has to be very like visual of,
Yeah.
what your goals are to be able to sell that to people.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So that's basically what we're talking about. So look, I think all of us can join the forum and continue the discussion there. And hopefully it can lead to something. I think, are you still investing in projects, or how does it work for you at the
I
moment?
do invest in projects, and but most of the time today we're just like consultants for various projects. So we're exploring people. Some people are calling. Well, you were talking about the storage problem. So some people are just calling us for. We have a storage problem. Do you need a solution? Look at the business case. How can you solve it? And that's how it works, basically. So
Yeah.
we're not dogmatic. So I'm not always like saying you should do that, but we're coming up with ideas.
Well, that's
And
fantastic.
when the idea is actually okay for the client, we basically deliver the solution.
Well, I hope that we can work together. Let's get on the forum and see if we can also like work together on things. Typically, these conversations lead to actual improvements and joint ventures between the people on the show. So hopefully that we can do that.
Brilliant. But definitely interested in your project of Web4. That sounds like amazing. And I'm pretty sure we're just at the first few steps, of a real revolution from the decentralized type of system we can bring to people.
Exactly. All right. I think it's a good point to end the show on. Let's continue on the forum and look forward to next week. Hopefully you can join us as well.
Brilliant. I'll try to.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and all our speakers, all the staff, everyone that came to listen in. And we'll be back here next week, every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern. Thank you.
Great discussion,
Bye-bye.
guys. Lots of fun.
Thank you so much.
Likewise.